Welcome to TSG's Expert Top Picks, covering some of the highlights from the first day of Microsoft Inspire 2020. I'm joined by some of TSG's experts who will be sharing their insights and what they've learned from the first day of the conference. So over to you first, Rory, and you can introduce yourself and maybe tell us a bit about what you picked up from the first day of the conference.
Great. Yeah, so my name's Rory McKean. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at TSG. There was tons of stuff that came out yesterday. I've been asked to choose only one, so the one that I would go with is HCI, which is something that will really help our on-premise customers, and we'll get into more detail on that tomorrow. Stephen, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm Stephen Osprey. I'm the Microsoft Solutions Director. My top pick is Teams. Lots and lots of incremental change there, so hopefully get into that a bit later.
And on to Andrew Wolf as well.
I'm Andrew Wolf. I'm our Dynamics 365 solution architect. I think the biggest thing for me was Dataflex and its Pro version, Dataflex Pro.
We have another Andrew with us as well, so Andy Fox.
Hi there, I'm Andy Fox. I'm the Operations Infrastructure Analyst here at TSG. I think my top pick, again, as Rory said, there's a lot of stuff going on altogether, but Azure Arc is something I think could be really powerful. There's some interesting stuff on the horizon coming for that. Could be good for our customers.
So we'll touch on a lot of those topics later on, but first, the keynote from yesterday's launch of the conference. There was a lot of topics that were covered, but one of the main key themes was the purpose-driven digital transformation. And Rory, that quite fits with the way that TSG works and our missions and our values, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for us, it hits exactly to our mission statement, and also the way that we're engaging with customers. So we recently launched our customer success managers. On the back of that, there's a big piece around education. So we know with any transformation, a big part of that is about educating on the benefits and helping our customers through their cloud journey. So there was a lot in there to help the high-end customers that are that they're already on that journey, and there's some fantastic sort of starter both from a technical and a product perspective. So it feels like TSG is very much in line in step with Microsoft.
Another theme that came up as well was the remote first approach, and this obviously is in light of the current pandemic and the shift to remote working. Stephen, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it was when they were running through some of the numbers. I mean, the scale of adoption of people picking up Teams and Microsoft 365 for the first time is frankly beyond anybody in a disaster recovery or testing would never have imagined the volume of people. You're talking about a seventh of the planet potentially using the platform. So it's a massive flux in terms of users. The thing that got me thinking about that was I've been at Inspire a few years, and the first one that I attended, I think, was 2015 or 2016. There is no way that even the platform back then could have handled this kind of growth. So the fact that the whole platform is flexed and scaled to the demands that's been put on it without really missing a beat really is quite phenomenal, and a sort of a testament to this kind of remote first kind of idea, because it looks like that's going to be the kind of default mode of operating for most businesses and most customers that we speak to. So I take a great deal of confidence from that, and the ultimate of all user acceptance testing scenarios. It's come through it with flying colours.
It's interesting as well, isn't it, that when you look at not just the numbers of people, but who, so there was a big announcement around not just one marquee name, but a wall of names, were given. I was just going to share my screen really quickly on that. I mean, it's a very enviable list. You're in good company if Sony, FedEx, Coca-Cola, HP, amongst others, have decided that I'm going to keep calling it Power Platform instead of Dataflex. I know we're going to come to that later, but that, along with Teams and the full Azure platform, and you've got guys like Coca-Cola moving from Salesforce wholesale to Microsoft Azure and Dynamics. Now that's a massive move. Walgreens and Boots, massive outfit, typically would look at full enterprise solutions. So for that going across, it's as I say, it's a large list of marquee names.
And those moves to remote, although many of those success stories were massive, very rapid Teams rollouts, it was one of the engineering firms moved 2,000 design engineers to remote working over a weekend. And they're people using powerful desktops with complex software, all moved to using VDI on Azure.
Yeah. Even if you take someone like Grant Thornton's, someone in a heavily regulated environment, we know that's a particular vertical that has been more sluggish, moving to the cloud for reasons of, control and security. So that's a big name to move, just outside the top four, deciding to use, Dynamics CRM, Azure and Microsoft 365. So that's a big move. So it's not as if they just had one name in one vertical. We're looking here at telecommunications, pharmacy, manufacturing, retail. It's a significant list.
Mm-hmm.
The big manufacturing stories, I think that was one that was highlighted from Microsoft, was the fact they were working with Rolls-Royce, some of the Microsoft partners, completely reconfiguring one of their main production lines, turning it around record time so they could start designing and manufacturing the medical ventilators as well. This whole sort of COVID pandemic situations not only just forced businesses to get their employees to start working remotely, it's forced businesses to start producing entirely new products and working in totally different ways. And it's I think it's really, really impressive how flexible certainly the Azure back end behind all of these Microsoft services is to be able to turn these around so quickly.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is I was hearing a number of stories where they'd gone from response to sort of rethink, is the way that they put it. So this idea that we had to respond very quickly to remote working, then we'll move to sort of enhance that from a security and a reliability perspective in terms of for end users being productive when they're working remotely, to now saying that we have to rethink our businesses and the way we work. Whole supply chains, whole business processes have completely changed in a few week period. And I think that's the interesting thing where, again, not wanting to steal thunder later from bits around, what was the Power Platform? It allows that flexibility, and so there were some amazing stories of within only a few days, creating whole new process flows, whole new ways of working, which is fantastic.
Yeah. There was one, the St Michael's Winery, which is a kind of famous case study that Microsoft did in January. Just full Dynamics 365 implementation, full cloud hosting services. They've actually gone back and done a re-case study post-COVID to actually show, well, what are you guys doing now? And they were saying, well, actually, we re-engineered an entire operations and sales model within a day because we had all of this stuff set up already. So basically the case study that we were doing before, we're still doing that, but we're all at home, which is quite powerful.
And I think the interesting bit that goes beyond the case studies, we won't have time to get into it today, but is Catalyst, which is now Microsoft's best practice transformation approach. And so what they're saying is learning from both big and small companies that have made big changes. And it's not just big pondering programs of change, but actually during lockdown, COVID, when there would need to be fast responses, that was very much the approach that they took. So I think that could be a really useful resource for a number of customers.
And really what they discussed around the remove to remote first is what we've seen internally as well. So how do you think this is going to affect how we work with our customers going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, for us, we were fortunate in that we'd already made those steps to the cloud. So in terms of our hosted telephony, hosted, we've been using aspects such as Teams for collaboration for a number of months, and then in the weeks in the build up when we realized our customers would move to remote working, we needed to get there ahead of time. So our chief executive David decided that we would all move a week earlier than perhaps we needed to, so that we were all settled and prepared, so then that we could then serve our customers. And I think we've seen some fantastic stats. So our net promoter score was already there, world-class level at plus 70, has gone up to now plus 80 and beyond. Our productivity across a number of teams has also increased as we've had an increase in demand. So for us, remote working using collaboration tools like Teams and Microsoft 365 have enabled us. We don't just sell it; it's a core bit of the business. If we lost that for a week, we would have a massive setback.
And as you say, Teams has been a massive part of that, and some of the figures that Microsoft announced in that keynote were absolutely outstanding. I don't know if you have them, so you can share your screen and show everybody else.
Yeah, I know, Andrew. I think you had it captured. If you wouldn't mind sharing the screen on that one, but it's just this wall of numbers that it's kind of hard to fathom. It's sort of 500 million conversations daily. This sort of thing. It's sort of mind-boggling.
Hang on, I missed the share. I'll get the right one.
Technical difficulties.
There we go.
So yeah, there we touch on 75 million daily active Teams users, and I think 200. I think it was 200 million Teams.
It's
Yeah,
200 million
million
Office
Office
365
365
commercial users. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the 75 million daily active Teams users. It's can't quite wrap my head around that, because I think in January the figure was like 20 something or 30 something, you know, so it's more than double.
And if you look at that in terms of the number of users and then the actual number of minutes per day, so 4.1 billion Teams meeting minutes. So it's not as if these are 5-minute conversations that are happening. You know, these are long, involved, complex collaboration conversations that are happening. You know, so that's just mind-boggling. But also, just as an aside to that, you know, 1 billion Windows 10 monthly active devices. I mean, that's not, you know, a collection of sort of aggregated figures over time because we haven't uninstalled devices. That's, you know, monthly active devices, 1/7 of the world population. It's unbelievable. You know, they've got in a very commanding position.
Yeah, definitely. The other one that's mind-boggling as well, I said it before, is the Azure growth. In terms of a cloud platform, I can't think of any other cloud platform out there that just seems to experience this, you know, crazy 50+% growth year on year on year on year, and they just seem to continue to invest in it as well. It's a really strong offering.
And you mentioned Teams as your pick, Stephen. Obviously, the stats back you up, but was there anything in particular that you saw or that you see coming that was of real interest?
A couple of the sessions I was in, one of them really was around how quickly Microsoft sort of pivoted their roadmap for Teams. So Teams has gone through a huge amount of incremental advance, even pre-COVID. But as soon as that sort of hit, there was some competition really with Zoom and the likes. And some of the pluses that Zoom has or had over Teams was, you know, the ability to have more than 4 people on a screen. I think it was within the space of about 3 weeks, Microsoft recognised that they already had that in the roadmap, pulled it from whatever place it was in down to first place, put it in, rolled it out, and now they've launched this Teams Together, which effectively builds on that and has the ability to have sort of round table type visual meetings or theatre, sort of lecture hall type meetings as well, all with kind of really high quality and the virtual backgrounds as well. So they just really seem to be throwing money at it on enhancements.
It's interesting. It's interesting as well when you think about it from there's often been a number of mentions about you know, the exclusive video video provider, which, you know, it's constant references to Zoom, and I think there's this interesting comparison between Teams and Zoom in a business to business environment. And you know, from a collaborations and a security perspective, there isn't really a competition, but we can see that Microsoft they have the full Zoom feature set and, you know, looking to deliver. So I mean, I've just shared my screen to show, you know, what they've already delivered so far and what's coming. I think some key bits for me was around the ability to have rooms. So that ability to kind of split off, have sort of smaller discussions, especially when you might have 20 or 30 people on a call. Sometimes you need to split up to get consensus and then bring everyone back together. That seems to be a real necessity for sort of larger team meetings or you know, larger events we're trying to run with customers.
Yeah, Teams Live as well. They took the restrictors off of that, so that was limited to like 1,000, I think, participants, and they changed that to 10,000. On the standard Teams meetings, you've got it up there. They've increased that from, I think it was maybe 300 up to 1,000 participants. So again, the scale's just kind of coming through.
Yeah, and some of the bits with live reactions as well. I think we saw some of that sort of preview features in some of the interactivity with some of the sessions. And it's that kind of thing of just allowing people to participate and not get that video call fatigue that you know has a lot of psychologists reporting back on at the moment. Yeah.
And some of that stuff's much easier to see if you're participating in a meeting. So like the raise hand thing, you can kind of notice, but some of those live reactions and the way messages will pop up at the top, it's going to make the platform so much better. The breakout rooms is a thing that several of our customer use cases have been after.
Absolutely. I think this is the sort of where we are at the moment, and then I think they sort of gave the very quick snapshot of getting sort of more increased, and it was just sort of it was sort of trying to show, look, any number that Zoom can do, we can effectively do. But I think it's the innovation piece that kind of goes beyond that, isn't it? It's not just a number of people on that screen, but actually some of the other views that we can see. So so I'm looking forward to see how this works. But this sort of lecture theatre style with people next to each other might be an easier way of sort of visualizing and keeping active involved in the conversations that we're having, and some other bits around how to share. So at the moment it's very much a case of if you share a screen as I'm doing now, everyone sort of moves off to the side, but the sort of ability to start having different sizes and shapes of presenters and multiple presenters at the same time along with content is it's pretty innovative and moving beyond what's even available in that kind of Zoom catalog of features.
And you're comparing a platform that you're comparing a product that just does collaborative meetings with a platform that does everything.
Yeah, and that for me is the key thing. So yeah, they've matched Zoom for the kind of video call bit already, and they already had the interoperability. If you're on a meeting for an hour, usually you're trying to do a thing, and the thing you're trying to do is edit a PowerPoint, build a Word document, work on an Excel together. You're doing a thing, and Zoom can't do any of that, and Teams has had that since day one. The other piece that was a subtle number they threw at me was that they've now got 3 times the number of daily users actively using an app within Teams as well, which is really interesting. So their kind of little sort of mini app framework within Teams isn't so many anymore. They're up to just shy of 9,000 vendors have actually published an app on there, and there's quite a lot of hoops to jump through to do that. So the quality of them's there as well, which is great. So people are really starting to kind of customize and bolt stuff on the back of their Teams core system.
I think we could talk about Teams all day, but there were some other announcements at the conference. Dataflex, another big one. Andrew, I don't know if you want to talk around this.
Yeah, so the first part of the announcement came in several parts over the course of the day. We're used to the Common Data Service, which is the platform that underpins Dynamics and CRM Online and Dynamics 365 Sales Online. They're renaming Common Data Service to Dataflex Pro, whilst at the same time bringing out a lighter version just called Dataflex. Dataflex Pro and CDS will always need Power Apps or Dynamics licensing, where Dataflex itself will be licensed with the normal Microsoft 365 licenses, will give you access to some of the features. They were slightly vague about which ones, but effectively it will let you create large data sets, record data that you need in a secure way, and build, design, and embed all that inside Teams. So from within Teams, you can add some data and create the data that you want, have it secured securely and made available to your users whilst being tracked and related to other data. One of the sentences was along the lines of moving from I work and we work to all work. So it's a new part of the same platform, just built back into Teams, and brings us almost back to where we started.
Yeah, it's a massive point though, isn't it? Because Teams has been fantastic, but it has also been siloing data. So it's been a great collaboration tool, but unless you take whatever you create in terms of documents or whatever it is that you're producing, if you don't put that into Dynamics or what other systems you have, whether that's a SharePoint library somewhere, it ends up being lost. And the typical archiving is within 12 months you're effectively on a rolling basis of losing all of that rich information in history. So that's a significant step. There's so many scenarios you could apply to it, right? So I guess if you're engaging with customers, if you have a customer portal through it, if you were perhaps engaging on a project, or if you were doing professional services and collaborating, perhaps in a legal environment, or even from a manufacturing perspective, pulling the specification together, you're going to want that in more than 12 months' time, and it's very easy to lose that otherwise, isn't it?
Yeah. And we know there'll be design challenges when we come to architect solutions to understand whether we can put Dataflex just Dataflex, embed it in Teams and make that work, or whether we need to move have a bigger Dataflex Pro solution. And you can, the common data service can be embedded in Teams in not quite the same way already. So you'll always be able to join up one thing and the other thing and go for what's right for the licensing and the requirements and the scalability that our customers ask us for.
And the other thing out of that as well, I suppose, is just to your point, Rory, it makes the data set much more rich, so that from a BI perspective, when you're actually trying to pull analytics out of, what's the latest activity on this customer or this production run or whatever it happens to be, there will be a level of confidence there that your primary productivity tool is constantly tuned into that data and just incrementally enriching that over time. Whereas right now, like you said, the team's productivity thing kind of happens over here, and then the meeting ends, and then people have to go back to the systems of record. So I think that will be a big change to actually getting some really top quality analytics out.
There's also a massive education piece I think is needed around Dataflex, in that it's been in the market now under the name CDS and Power Platform for more than 12 months, but it feels like very much a technical led movement rather than being what it should be, which is it's an incredibly flexible tool. It's not like you have to implement a full CRM system. It has all the data robustness, it has all of from a governance and access perspective and from a data integrity perspective, but actually allows you to deploy very quickly. I mean, there were a number of cases, and you talked about the winery there before, but I think there were 7 examples even as part of the keynote, showing customers within days. We had one customer that we helped with a few charity days to help with their provisioning of PPE gear, and that was in what was it, 24 hours or 40 hours? Andrew, I know you're involved in that project.
That's right. It was a team of people together, and within 48 hours they were up and running on a system that helped them distribute, track, and issue PPE across the West Midlands.
Yeah. And again, I think previously when we've done this through things like Canvas Power Apps or other items before, we've done that at risk, in that you have a one-off item that perhaps is feeding back into something even as simple as a Excel CSV file, whereas actually what we're talking about here is a robust platform, but allows you to go after particular things that you need to. So right now, as of the moment, why this is so important is that you suddenly need to do something completely differently to the way that you've done it before, and you need to scale and build that in three days or within 3 weeks from start to finish. You're able to do that. You don't have that legacy problem as long as you're not looking to migrate data into it. Typically that won't be the case because it's a standing start. Normally it's a new line of business or there's something new that you're trying to get to, which will allow you to move very, very quickly, but not at an expense from any of the other aspects in terms of security and otherwise. Yeah.
Well, all of this comes back to streamlining and automating processes, presenting money-saving opportunities to customers, and creating that one environment that everything can sit within. I know that a lot of this was discussed in the keynote and the welcome session, but I know all of you attended separate breakout sessions as well. Was there any other significant announcements or things that you think will be of interest to our customers? Rory, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to have to talk about it tomorrow, but I think there's 2 things that have been promised and not delivered on by industry experts previously. One of those is true edge and hybrid computing, which I think has been answered now through Azure HCI, but we'll need to talk about that in tomorrow's session. And then the second one is that single pane of glass. That's a term that's often used when managing your infrastructure estate. Often there are lots of tools that you need and lots of competencies to be able to do that. We as a managed service provider, we have a lot of these tools, but actually what Microsoft are now putting into the market is, under Arc and Lighthouse will give us the ability to sort of manage full estates of customers, who are both in Azure, in data centers, and on premise. So it's quite exciting.
We'll touch on some of that tomorrow then.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Yeah. Again, I've got a bunch of other sessions lined up kind of tonight and first thing tomorrow, so we'll probably get into a bit more detail around sort of Power BI, Power Platform and Dynamics. But the other thing, one of the breakouts that really stood out for me was they had a look across the Fortune 500 companies just to see the kind of usage of the core Microsoft platforms, and they're saying that 97% of Fortune 500 companies use Power Platform, and some guys, but that does encompass quite a lot of products, so so that wasn't all that surprising. But the one that really was surprising to me was that 57% actually use Dynamics 365, which is an awful lot higher than I thought it would be. So hopefully get into some more detail after some sessions tonight for tomorrow.
Busy night for you ahead then, Andrew Wolf.
So yeah, one of the other things that we were looking at was customer voice. We review the release notes as soon as Microsoft released them, and early this month they released the 2020 Wave 2 notes, and that talked about what was coming in 365 Sales and the other products. And there was a funny note along the bottom of the bit about Forms Pro that just says look for new announcements. And so the announcement on Forms Pro, hopefully that shared the right screen there. The announcement on Forms Pro is that Forms Pro is now 365 customer voice. And that will capture feedback instantly, integrate for deeper insights. So we mentioned BI at Power BI earlier, and there's a bunch of whole subtle insights, subtle mentions of data and insights that have been throughout the whole day, and that's the theme of yesterday, and I think there'll be a bit more of it tomorrow. And so customer voice will build on what Forms Pro's got, give us a much better interface for seeing the respondents and comparing the responses we're getting to surveys with benchmark data, and giving us out-the-box templates so we don't have to create surveys from scratch. We've already got some built-in best practices.
Fantastic. And coming to you, Andy Fox, as well.
Yeah, so the other big one, really actually on the Monday before Inspire kicked off properly, there were a number of pre-sessions more focused at the partners and the tools that we use to support customers. And I think Azure Sentinel is one of the big ones that's made sort of some big strides over the last 12 months since it went into general release. That it's a really, really impressive security platform from Microsoft that uses the power of sort of Azure's AI analytics and just the depth and the reach that Microsoft have got into, the OS level for everyone's workstations, for their servers. It pulls in integration information from supporting networking appliances, and it just combines all of that data with the user level information in an Office 365 login information, looks at where actions are happening, why they're happening, whether they're authorized to happen or not, and then just applies just sheer number crunching to some degree to see how the risk of threats and the reach that's got into your network, how that can play back out and provide information back to you and take remedial action as well. So I think some exciting stuff to come in there, because that also ties in with what Roy was saying about Arc and Lighthouse, and pulling all of those three elements together. It's going to give us a really strong management platform for our customers, I think.
Do you want just to come in on that as well? I think Vivek Kumar is one of the really good security analysts and architects at Microsoft, was talking about even just some of the simpler things. And one of the things that came out as a great stat that's sort of been buried a bit is that 99.9% of identity attacks won't happen if you have multi-factor authentication turned on. So they can tell you globally, you're going to be, within that tiny percent. In terms of that vulnerability, by just turning on multi-factor authentication, in most cases that's going to be free. That's a very limited job for us to do for our customers. So I think that was fantastic to kind of hear that stat. That's something that we need to replay with our customers, because many have been hesitant because of an interruption to their usage. In terms of using an authentication tool, yes, it might take 30 seconds longer to log in, but 99.9% of identity attacks. I mean, that just, that's massive. And getting that direct from Microsoft, from their security experts, is a big deal.
Really is super important. I think we've covered a lot from the first day there, and I know you've all got a busy evening visiting some more sessions and picking up some more information for us, and we'll touch on some of the topics that we've discussed tomorrow. But for now, bye from us all, and we'll catch up again with everyone tomorrow.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks.